Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be cutting down a chicken for saute. So the point of this is to break down the whole chicken into even sized pieces that you can cook by pan frying or sauteing. This is a great way of making your dishes look very professional. So we'll start by just pulling a little excess skin from the leg over onto the breast. This is to protect it later when we're frying it. And then we're going to run our knife down past the thigh, just through the skin. There'll be a pocket here with no flesh in it. We're going to run it down till we get to this part, which is called the oyster, which we need to remove. It's a good piece of meat you don't want to waste. And to do that, you're just going to push your thumb underneath it. There'll be a cup which holds the oyster, and you're just going to firmly press down that cup and it will pop that oyster out. And the next thing we need to do is locate this ball and socket joint, which we're going to firmly press down on while pulling the rest of the chicken leg up, and you'll see that it dislocates it and it will pop out the other side. And this whole leg is now completely separate from the rest of the carcass, and we can just run our knife through the ball and socket joint we just dislocated to remove the entire leg. Now we just turn the chicken around and we do exactly the same thing on the other side. Next up, you'll want to remove the wing tips and what's called the winglet. So to do that, you're just going to cut through this flap of skin, and then you're going to dislocate these as well and pull firmly outwards and down, and you'll see that it will expose the drumette bone, and then you can just cut them off. And again, just do the same for the other side. Now we need to remove the wishbone. So if you look in the neck cavity of the chicken, you'll see there is a Y-shaped bone that runs up each side of the breast, and you'll just slide your knife in either side of the bone, put your fingers in, run your thumb and index finger firmly up and down the bone until you get to the top and bottom on both sides, and then you can just pull it out. If your wishbone is already broken, or if you break it whilst removing it, just make sure you remove all the pieces. You'll be able to see that you've got all the pieces once you have this Y shape and you have a flat white piece on each end. Okay, so next up we need to remove the rest of this spine, which now has no meat left on it. It's mainly just skin, fat and cartilage. So slide your knife just under the breast here and look inside, and you'll be able to see that there is a piece of white cartilage right in the bottom there. So what you need to do now is line up your knife with the two wings you can see either side of the carcass there, and cut down just until you get to that white piece of cartilage, and then stop. Now we're going to remove this piece on the right completely, so what you want to do is just cut through the skin going underneath the wing towards the neck cavity, and then we'll just invert the spine, basically turn it inside out, and you'll see the neck will pop through, and then you can just pull or cut this piece off. Now essentially what we're left with here is the two breasts attached to a small piece of the breastplate. That's called a crown. So you could use this as a roasting joint, you could do this to a turkey, it's the same bone structure, so that you could do this for your Christmas lunch. But we are going to take the two supremes off, which we're going to do by cutting the breast in half on each side, and we're going to get down to the wing bone, which will still be attached to the supreme when we remove it. So find the halfway point between the center of your chicken and the outside of each breast, and this will be where you want to make your first cut. So a shallow cut just through the skin first, and then have a quick look and see if you're on target for that wing bone. You should be able to see this white piece of cartilage. If you found that, then perfect. Keep cutting and you'll remove the supreme. And again, we'll do the same for the other side. So what we're left with now is two halves of a breast attached to the breastplate, which we'll need to get two portions out of. So first, start by just trimming off any small bones on each side, and then we've got to find the halfway point of this. However, bear in mind that one side of this is a lot lower and smaller than the other side, so don't cut this directly in half. You want to go slightly further towards the thicker end to get an equal portion out of this. So once you've found where you want to cut, make a shallow cut until you feel a bit of resistance, put the tip of the knife down, and then firmly push the hill straight through that breastplate. It should be fairly soft and your knife will go through quite easily. And there you've got your 2 bits of breast. At the end of this video I'll put a picture up with all the different pieces and their names so you can refer back to it without watching the whole video through again. So now we need to break down this leg into the drumstick and the thigh, but we'll start by French trimming this end here. So you always want to French trim this before you remove the thigh, because the thigh is a good hold, whereas if you take off the thigh then you've got very little to hold on to whilst you're doing this. So cut directly towards the bone. You want to cut through all the tendons that are in that joint and scrape the remaining excess flesh right up to the top, making sure you cut through all of them tendons. And then you're just going to bend the joint back on itself so the way it doesn't naturally want to go until it pops off. You may want to use a tea towel to help with the grasp on this. So next up is just separating the thigh from the drumstick. So to do this we're going to find this natural white line here. You put your knife in and you can see I go almost directly on top of that line, but it is a few millimeters over to the left of it, and then you'll go straight through cartilage and you'll be left with your drumstick and your thigh. And this thigh we just need to trim up a little bit, so remove any excess skin and any loose cartilage off of each end of that thigh bone. And that's our leg prepped. So we've got a drumstick and a thigh, and then we'll do the same to the other leg. So just quickly back to these supremes, we've got one last little bit to do, which is just to trim off the ends of these bones. So the very ends where it's slightly pinkish or red are actually quite soft, so you can cut through them with a knife. What you don't want to do is be trying to cut through solid bone with your knife, because it will just wreck it. If you're having any resistance at all, then stop and reassess where your cut is being made. And that's it, we're finished. So if you learned something today, please like, subscribe and comment, and I'll see you next week.